Californ-I-A.
Presented by Still a Frog.
The last letter I'd gotten from him was back in 2006. He said he was still chasing after his dreams. He hoped I would one day understand. That was what it had always been about. That damn dream. That damn California dream. The letter had ended with, "Stay gold, pony boy." We did that. Before he left, that'd been our thing, trying to stump one another with, "Guess which cheesy yet iconic 80s movie this line is from?" Cheesy but iconic pretty much sums up the 80s in general. The letter prior to that one had ended with, "I know you are, but what am I?" Okay, really cheesy 80s flicks. He never wrote with any sort of regularity, and maybe that just out of the blueness was part of the magic of his letters. And yes, he actually wrote, like pen to paper, smudgeable ink and everything. It'd been over a decade now, our final evening together. We went to the drive-in. I don't even remember what was playing. I really just like cuddling up with a cooler full of snacks, some wine, and talking. We could talk for hours. That was the thing with him. I always loved the conversation part. And it wasn't just about him struggling, like most men, to come up with the minimum number of words that would get him around third base and all the way to home plate. Nor was it about me secretly thinking, let's get this over with, and trying to make him feel as if he had cleverly seduced me with his none-too-witty repartee. No, the sex was good. It was just that the conversation was incredible. In fact, I easily saw the rest of my life with this man. He, however, just didn't see the rest of his life with me. I don't get it. Why LA? Why are you fixated on moving to the opposite side of the country? I must have asked that 1,000 times and always hated his reply. Ever since I was a boy, I knew I was California bound. I'm gonna do it one day. Blah, 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 blah. He'd go on in this far-off kind of way. "Do you want to become a surfer?" I would ask, exasperated. "No, of course not," he chuckled. "Is it because the West Coast has the sunshine and the girls all get so tanned?" "What?" he said. "Is it because here all the leaves are brown and the sky is gray?" I had a million of them. Sarcasm, "Thy name is a girlfriend left behind in favor of some la-la land fantasy." And he would get pissy. Good. I couldn't just up and go to California. I had a life here, a job. My family was here. I'd recently bought a house, for Christ's sake. The funny thing, though, was that he hadn't really asked me to go. When he did leave, I barely managed a half-hearted, "Bye, see ya." And that was it. You always know exactly when a relationship begins, whether it's that first kiss tingle, that implied standing Saturday date, the first time you utter the L word, and the casual ones end with the same kind of clarity. But sometimes with a deeper one, it's hard to know when it's really over. In this case, I still wasn't sure. The letters, sometimes postcards, started coming about 1.5 years later. The first one ended with, "Goonies never say die." Well, that one was easy. I smiled despite myself. The last letter, as I mentioned, was 2006. Since then, postal silence. I hadn't been pining away for the past 10+ years, mind you. I dated, certainly, and really wanted to fall in love, but there was always this imaginary force field surrounding me. He was my soulmate, and a person only has one soulmate in this world, right? And then today, after 12 years, another letter. I couldn't believe it. This one was wistful, and all those memories came flooding back. He'd written, "If you're ever in LA," followed by an address. Then, "I will not be ignored," hand-drawn smiley face. Fatal Attraction, I nostalgically whispered. I searched Google Maps immediately and saw that the house, if you could call it that, was surrounded by some sort of Buckingham Palace-worthy courtyard, complete with drawbridge and moat. Apparently, he'd made those California dreams come true. Good for him. Or not, really. I don't know what I felt exactly, but I knew what I was going to do. The last vacation I'd gone on was about 4 years ago with my parents and some other family members to Cape Cod, where I shared a bunk, courtesy of being the only unmarried older cousin there, with my 8-year-old nephew. That was an experience. I wrote immediately, "California, here I come." His place was surreal. He had to be like a movie producer or in a rock band, something. This was the stuff you saw on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. I knocked, expecting the door to be answered by a three-piece suited Jeeves, but it wasn't. It was him. "Oh my God, I can't believe you're here." He looked incredible. He hugged me warmly, and it all felt so right. "It's so good to see you," I gushed, holding on to our embrace a little longer than I probably should have. He showed me into the library. The 2-story library. Certainly put our public book repository to shame. Fresh brewed iced tea was then brought in by the aforementioned Jeeves, except that his name was Carl, and he had on a t-shirt that said, "Keep calm and make it yourself." "Why, thank you," I tried to say in my best rich person accent, whatever the hell that was. As soon as Carl left, after having nodded and rolled his eyes at me, he began to laugh hysterically. "It's okay, it's still just me," he grinned. I relaxed. We talked, and it was as if nothing had changed, all appearances to the contrary. He'd become a financial advisor. From the looks of it, to some pretty heavy hitters. "So you're not like a Beach Boy alternate or Ben Affleck stunt double?" I asked, only half joking. Of course not. I didn't come to California to don a bad Hawaiian shirt, wear Huarache sandals with socks, and sing to a geriatric crowd of women throwing their support bras at me, he snickered. Coming out here wasn't about fortune and fame. "You could have been a financial advisor back home," I asked. "Sure, but I don't know how to explain it. I'm at peace here. This place is who I am," he said. It hadn't taken me long to note the wedding ring. "You're married?" I asked. Well, duh. "I am. We're newlyweds, actually." "I'm happy for you," I began. "I always just wanted you to be—" But before I could finish, a very tall man, nerdy-looking in a cute way, entered the room. He had on tennis togs. I think that's how the rich folks say it. I honestly only knew this because he was holding a racket. "James," he said, "I'd like you to meet an old friend of mine." I stood. James held out his racketless hand. "This is my husband, James," he said softly. I sat back down. James then uttered a few pleasantries, asked what time lunch would be, and went to hit the courts or whatever tennis people do. But I didn't know what to say. "I know you wondered why I didn't ask you to come with me when I left," he offered. "Mystery solved," I observed somewhat awkwardly. "It's okay. Given what we shared, this must be a shock for you. I wanted to tell you before now. Before I left." He sighed. "So why didn't you?" I responded. "Because I didn't know how," he uttered. "But I thought we were soulmates," I found myself blurting. "We are. Soulmates are people who share a special connection and they somehow keep finding their way back to one another," he smiled. Maybe he was right, and maybe some part of me realized this all along. I don't know. And maybe this was the closure I'd needed. In fact, I knew it was the closure I needed. A silent pause, and then, "Please stay and have lunch with us. I'd love for you to get to know James." "Lunch," I said. "Lunch is for wimps." "Wall Street," he shot back. "We still got it," I grinned. "But seriously," I continued, "why did you write me, out of the blue, after all these years?" You come to a point where you realize life's a journey. It's such a cliche, but it's true. And it ends for all of us the same way, regardless of how much money you have, who you're married to, what state you live in. And that's when you know. It's who you make the trip with that really counts. You were the best. I love James with all of my heart, but what you and I shared, that's irreplaceable. I miss you. I miss our talks, and I miss having you in my life. I stood motionless. I had no idea how to respond. Finally, I walked over to his arms and said, "Damn you! Why did you have to be gay?" And yeah, I'm in for the trip.